Emotional algebra where the heart meets the math. What is integral is derivative as you figure out your path. Power plus emotions equals more than you can see. Listening to the wisdom.
Hey viewers, we're picking up the episode where we left off in the last episode and hope you enjoy the continuation of this. So here we go. Now we're looking at reactive attachment disorder, and that is the consequence of a lot of disrupted attachments, usually starting at or around birth and or through multiple traumas, or, you can have death by a million paper cuts, like we talked about. So I think we want to look at that as being something real. When I first started my career, I didn't believe in it. And I worked with some of my foster kids over time. And I kind of dismissed it as one of those, kind of diagnoses that doesn't seem right. And then I started to see it, and I really felt some accountability for what I was teaching at that time. So that's one of the lessons that taught me to be open to everything, entertain the theories and look at them and understand some of these processes and how they play out. And as a result, I've become a much better therapist because of that. And because I look at that rainbow attachment and attachment throughout the life, it's helped me with really looking at people where their disrupted attachments were throughout life, where the disrupted attachments could happen, even whether they're kids, teens, adults, couples. All these variables are very important to look at. And I think if you look at the symptoms, one of the reasons I bring this up, and I talked about it in the parenting book so much, is I have a chapter on healthy attachment and I have a chapter on attachment gone wrong, was because a lot of the behaviors we see with our kids are on a spectrum from absolutely disrupted attachments, from reactive attachment disorder, all the way through to healthy attachments. But you see the consistency of some of the manipulation, some of the lying, the people who are able to tell anybody anything they want to hear and to get their way. And then those who just mood swing to absolute rages and uncontrollable behavior. I'm very cautious about not throwing those diagnoses of it. Well, it's bipolar, or it's this anxiety if they're avoidant, or those might be the results. We want to still look at where did those symptoms come from. Might they result then in dysregulation in neurotransmitter functioning? Sure. Does that mean it's permanent? Not necessarily, because we know through neurofeedback treatment that you can help rewire somebody's brain and help awaken areas of the brain that were dormant because of early attachment disruptions and inability or not, to forming bonds because they didn't have consistent connection with parents. So we want to look at that. These are things we can shift and change. These are things that we can heal. And we'll look at some of the suggestions later on that too. But the idea to look at that spectrum from a reactive attachment disorder to a healthy attachment, we're going to find a lot of our kids in between there and understand that. So forming better attachments, rebuilding trust through this process is really critical.
Dr. E, I wanted to stop you here. The under the symptoms, superficial charm. I'm not sure people will know what exactly that is. I don't know myself. So can you explain that a little?
Yeah, it's somebody who can turn it on. Often we say, oh man, these people are great. They're going to be great greeters and connectors. They make friends so easily, yet they're doing it to get something out of it. Then when they don't get what they want out of it, then often there's a reaction. Because they're like, well, you didn't give me what I wanted. So then you see the other stuff. So it's a manipulative ploy to put something out there on the surface to then get something that if I don't get it, then you see the part of me inside that maybe feels vengeful, angry. And then they want power over people. They always want power over people, but am I using an emotion to attract people that seems love-based? Or am I using emotion now that's fear-based, is trying to gain control?
Got it. Interesting.
And that's where you see people who really behave in ways that's more like, either you see borderline personality people. To me, people with attachment disorders, if they're not resolved, often develop borderline personalities and or psychopathic personalities. They just don't have the ability to bond and connect with people. Yeah. And then they see people as objects and tools and weapons to be used.
So the stakes for this are real.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I
Yeah.
think again, if even we look at people in our culture and sometimes very prominent people in our culture, we see people, if we look at them, when we look at their behaviors, we see those are people probably with very disrupted attachments throughout their
Mm.
lives that they've never resolved, and they don't want to feel bad or wrong or weak, going back to our hierarchies, because they don't want to lose. So they have to look as good and or strong and or right as possible so they can be seen as winners. And we got to understand the life cycle of attachment and disrupted attachment if we don't heal it. Because the older we get, the more recalcitrant and resistant it becomes to changing and shifting, because those belief systems become ingrained and resist the idea of change because they believe it's a world of power over versus power with.
Right. And that's another interesting thing. None of this is set in stone. It can be changed throughout a lifetime. It can be improved upon. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's keep moving. Suggestions for building healthy attachments: be consistently responsive. Respond predictably to comfort, hunger, and reassurance cues to build that fundamental trust. Practice attuned interaction. Notice and reflect your child's emotions. I would say you feel frustrated to help them feel seen and understood. Create safe routines. Regular patterns for meals and sleep reduce anxiety and provide predictability. Remember, we touched on helplessness, and predictability is a huge part of helplessness. And then helplessness leads to hopelessness. So we have physical and visual connection. Use appropriate touch, hugs, sitting close, and maintain eye contact to empower the child and provide reassurance. And then offer comfort without shame. Allow children to express anger or fear without punishment or dismissal. So we're getting back to, again, that idea about being consistency. We want to build trust. If we don't have trust, remember along when he talked about communities, if we don't have trust, we don't have a community. If we don't have trust, to me, we don't have a family. We just have a bunch of people living around each other. So trust is critical. Consistency, predictability are important parts of that. I know, practice attuned interaction, and I know that you had a question about this, Andrew, in the setup.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've heard this before from
Mhm,
other people, but
mhm.
I think it's one of those things that maybe some people view as easier said than done. And how do you ensure that it's authentic, really, and that you're not just like even being sarcastic? Like I feel like that could come across, if it's not done properly, it could come across as maybe sarcastic or something else. It could be
Right.
perceived that way, you know?
Yeah, and I think we want to look at our sense of mindfulness. Where's our mindfulness now? Are we mindful about our own actions within ourselves? If we're not mindful about our own actions and the impact on others, we're not going to really be able to feel attuned and have that attunement with our kids. Because to me, it is when we're really in tune with our kids, sometimes they don't have to say something, we just feel it. And
Mm,
making sure, again, it's part of that consistency and letting them know they're important, and that helps build that sense of self, that helps them to feel empowered. And even again, you want to help your child develop in a sense of confidence, not a sense of arrogance. And arrogance is a false pride. I think confidence and pride often come together. They're different, and they can come together. And that you'll work through as your kids get older, and they might experience that fine line between confidence and arrogance. But that attuned parenting is really helping them to learn to be present and how to be present, not just with you and them, but then they transfer that to other relationships.
got it.
So, and in that, what are you doing? You're starting to reflect their emotions. I remember once my daughter was having a rough day. I told this story before, but I came home from work. She had already been in one timeout. My wife was trying to make dinner, and she was feeling a bit overwhelmed. And I just picked up my daughter, took her to the side, and I said, Grace, we had a nice long weekend together, and now mom and dad had to go back to work. And when we went back to work, I wonder if you're feeling upset about that. And she said, Gracie feels sad and mad that mommy, daddy go to work. And that was when she was about 18 to 20 months, somewhere in that range.
Wow.
Not many parents would believe their kid could have that insight, whereas that's
Yeah.
the result of attunement with your kids. and being aware that something's going on more than just getting in trouble. Remember, anger, rage, arrogance, flippancy, defiance, sarcasm, hatred, irritation are those 8 primary protective emotions. And that's what I was seeing. So I always want to look what's beneath that. So
Yeah.
physical and visual connection. What did I do in that situation even to help reestablish? Picked her up. I held her. I got her at my eye level. I then talked with her and looked her in the eye while we were talking. Often when our kids look away, it's because they're feeling guilt and shame. And if we're demanding compliance from them in that process, and we're just looking down at them, that's going to make it tougher to have eye contact because they're not wanting to feel those feelings of guilt, shame, failure, inadequacy, unlovable, unworthy. They feel overwhelmed by all that. So when we can build eye contact in all situations and even talk with them rather than lecture or yell at them, we're going to induce and foster that ability for them to have that more and more that physical and visual connection. So
And Dr.
understand the power you have.
When you're talking about eye contact, you're talking about it coming down to the same eye level as the child. Is that what you're saying? Or are you just talking about looking somebody directly in the eye?
I think it's both. I think when you're talking about a teaching moment, getting down to their level is important so it doesn't feel hierarchical. You want it to feel like you're at their level teaching with them, not talking at them. So in most situations, I want to get down to the kids' level or bring them up to mine. Even when in my office, I've talked about how I squat down when I got people on the couch, adults or kids, or I'm sitting in my chair at their level. That's important. So and even sometimes I'll sit below them. I'll let them stand while I sit. So that they see it's not about me having power over them. It's about having power with them in that process. A lot of parents I know are having problems, especially in today's world, with that idea of hierarchical versus equity. Equity does not mean that your kid is equal to you. It's about balance. It's about helping to see that you're trying to teach them their skills and strengths and gifts and weaknesses. And attachment is very much fostered in equity situations, not hierarchical situations, because it teaches fear. It disrupts their sense of confidence, their sense of comfort. They're more likely to learn to behave arrogantly and defiantly because it's my way or the highway. Or they're more likely to submit and follow into that anxiety of needing approval and acceptance from others before they can feel confident or comfortable within themselves. So understand your power and realize this is what's been evolving for time. Just because something happened in the past and it might have worked doesn't mean it's the way it's meant to be, the way it's supposed to be, or even healthy. And that's the one thing that we're seeing time and time again that we're trying to resolve in the world. And people that want to go back to the past and live in the was, they're pulling us backward, not moving us forward. We have the ability to learn from lessons in the past. And that's what we want to see, whether it's from our parents and or other situations or circumstances in our life. We're evolving in this world. And we can continue to re-evolve as we learn the patterns that weren't healthy. And I think that's really important to look at culture around us to see what really works and what doesn't. And don't react to fear of loss. Look to the ways that we can build community together.
Yeah. I mean, we're evolving, Dr. E, but the world is also evolving, which I think is one of the sources of what makes some of this so challenging for people.
Yeah. Because it's wanting to go back to the past. Sometimes there's wisdom in that. A lot of times it's based in fear, and most times it's based in fear because it's throwing out everything we learn and everything we understand because we feel afraid to lose something. And it's the idea that when there has to be a winner, then there has to be a loser. And no, that's not how it has to be. That's what fear said. The disruption of fear says. Whereas failure says it's time to learn. So this is important to look at even as you're forming your attachments. So offer comfort without shame. Without shame, allow your children to express anger or fear without punishment or dismissal. So again, help them understand what the purpose of each emotion is. What does shame tell us? It's we've stopped loving ourselves. What does guilt tell us? Well, we've stopped maybe doing loving other people because our actions are showing that. What does failure say? It's time to learn. Stupid is failure times X. Anger protects me when I feel threatened. Rage protects me when I feel in fear of my life or my integrity feels threatened. Remember that emotional specificity. If you don't get it, it might be time for you to learn it and to dive more into your emotions and continue to watch the shows and learn what we're trying to teach here. That helps. Again, what I do it works. And when we all work together, it works even better. And it's not that my way is the only way. It's that there are a lot of people teaching similar things. What I do is the culmination of a lot of things that I've learned, as well as a culmination of the things that I feel like I've grown into and know, building on what I've learned. So realize you want to help your kids do the same things and teach them the value of the emotions, not the curse of them. And that's where how you respond to them when they express those emotions is critical to how they will experience and express and or suppress those emotions as they get older. So suggestions for repairing damaged attachments: normalize rupture and repair. Acknowledge that conflict is normal. Apologizing when you make a mistake. It teaches children that relationships can recover. Co-regulate before you correct. Help a dysregulated child calm their body first through breathing or proximity before discussing behavior. Real quick, while we stay on the page, is I always tell people, and when I'm at schools doing IEPs, you can't take care of your educational house until your emotional house is taken care of. So kids can't learn new information or really understand behaviors and interactions until they feel calmer inside. Fear is going to seek to protect and see what they need to do. So we want to remember that in regulating. So regulate yourself and also then help regulate your child. Foster felt safety. Healing requires the child to experience safety in their body, not just logically, through a calm and predictable parental presence. So realize that also that goes for you as the parent. Make sure that you're feeling in a place of felt safety and calmness and regulated, potentially before and or while. Maybe you go through the same calming activity with your kids to show, hey, my parent is willing to do this with me. They're not just telling me to do it. They're also equitably a part of the process. Consistency rewires expectations. Traumatized children expect rejection. That is what they consistently respect. They expect pain. They might expect that they need to hold on to fears and mistrust for those reasons. Repair requires showing up again and again and keeping even small promises. You're creating an environment of predictability, of positive outcomes, of comfort, of peace, of love, instead of the predictability of chaos, fear, pain, shame, guilt, and the disruptions that we often aren't taught in our hierarchical worlds. Use somatic tools. Since trauma is stored in the body, use gentle movement or rhythmic activities, rocking music, to restore safety faster than words. So touch and comfort within the body helps re-regulate emotions. Realize the power of that. So even, what do I do when my daughter feels upset? I always give her hugs, and they're long hugs because I want her to know, hey, comfort comes from within you. Now, do I want her to feel like I'm giving that to her? No, this is a process we have together, but I'm also helping her to feel my energy of calmness and support. And then it's kind of like when kids are 2 and they're trying to establish that trust versus mistrust in that first place of life. Often they resolve Erickson's first stage of psychosocial development. They resolve that successfully when they can explore the world and come back to their parent. And even then is also individuation versus self-doubt comes after that. So if they have a safe home they can go to and reestablish comfort, and then learn that they are their own safe home to establish that comfort in their self, they can explore the world more safely. And that's where, our daughter always knows she can come home. She's been to China and she's gone off to France for another educational opportunity. And she lives in, the big city of Atlanta, and she navigates that, and she drives all over, and she does all these things because even though her temperament was slow to warm up, her attachment was firm. So we let her know that it was okay to be her. And when she was ready, live life. And that's why I taught her, be careful in life, not fearful of life, as we've talked about. And I know you love that phrase.
Yeah. I also like that what it seems like what you're saying here is no matter how bad it gets, it can always be improved. Like there's no reason to give up if there's really, attachment issues that are severely negative, let's say. Like you can make it back to a positive place, right?
Absolutely. A lot of people think they just have to throw in the towel on when there's these attachment disruptions, and or parents are like, my kid's unhealable, untreatable, and they think that or feel that inside. I have had some very severe cases totally turn around, and the
Hmm.
parents are amazed. And often that is having the parent involved in the therapeutic process and watching what I do and seeing that, and the things they couldn't believe or didn't believe in the power of these early life events being significant, and reparenting, reforming attachments. That's critical to this whole process. So it is very much an elasticity issue of that. Yeah, what early learning can be relearned. And that's why in the hypnotic work, I take people back and ask them to go to whatever time, place, memory, emotion, experience, attitude, belief, perception, or event, wherever in time they need to go to help them understand what brings it to this point in life. And after we find those times and places using trance, or whether it might even sometimes be the ketamine assisted psychotherapy, depending on what they feel the needs are or what we feel the needs are, those issues often resolve after we've done that deeper work and we've brought that disrupted aspect of self, as I say, into their light, into their wholeness, into the present, in that healing space. It just almost melts away time and time and time again. I've seen it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Good thing for
Yeah.
people to keep in mind.
Yeah. So now we're running here. So impact of technology on attachment. So reduced attunement, checking phones during meals or play is associated with lower observed warmth and nonverbal responsiveness. Disrupted joint attention. Devices can fragment the smooth flow of interaction and reduce necessary eye contact. Passive engagement. Passive background phone use can be disruptive because it fragments a parent's attention and response to child's cues. Age sensitivity. Infants and toddlers are most sensitive to disrupted face-to-face interactions caused by technology. That includes them being on technology. I will say this, why this is still up. Do not have your kids on technology, especially before the age of 2. That was my daughter, and even now I say as much before the age of 4, and maybe 5 even. And now we're seeing with kids, they really shouldn't be on the social media and things. Now it's hard because so much of learning is technology based, whereas we really want to realize they don't need to learn about technology really before the age of 3 and potentially after. But that is, to me, just critical feedback. Sleep and mood. Excessive screen use can degrade sleep quality, leading to irritability that undermines the next day's parent-child interactions. If your kids on technology, you're putting them to sleep with technology because they seem to go to sleep easier and they're young, you got to realize the impact of that on potentially brain development. And people don't realize how we're training brainwave patterns, because people tend to go into potential theta states versus focused beta states, and maybe it affects alpha states. We're still learning a lot about that. There are definitely impacts on brain functioning on early exposure, and that is going to affect attachment.
Now, Dr. E, it was in late 2025, I think it was in December, that Australia made it illegal for people under the age of 16 to go on social media sites. What did you think about that? I think I know what you're going to say, but what's your take on
it? And it took it out. I mean, I think sometimes, just like our kids are playing with a toy that they shouldn't play with, and we're like, or even a tool or a weapon they shouldn't be playing with, what do we do as parents? We take it out of their hands before they cause harm to themselves. Parents are having a hard time making those decisions, and they get in that feeling, well, other people are doing it, and I don't want to be the bad guy. So I don't mind the government saying, hey, we're making a decision in your best interest. We're making a decision in the best interest of your parents, and we're going to enforce this because we see the long-term impact. In the moment, as a parent, we're often thinking, well, I don't want my kid to cry. I don't want him to whine. I don't want him to get mad. I don't want him to throw a tantrum. Just let him have it. What's the long-term implication of that, though? What's the long-term implication behavior? What's the long-term implication on connection and attachment? What's the long-term implication on your kid learning how to manipulate situations to their advantage that you will and other people will pay the price for? We are paying the price for in our world of people who did not have healthy, proper boundaries put in place from their parents, from their school administrators, from other people, and or even parents enable that disrespect by promoting it and or ignoring it. That's just a bottom line. We're seeing the consequence of years of entitlement and years of lack of boundaries and healthy attachment connections.
Let me ask you this, Dr. E. We saw that happen in Australia. That's a long way away from the US.
Mhm.
Let's say policymakers came to you and said, Dr. E, what would you advise? Is 16 the right age? Is 13 the right age? Should it even be older than 16? What would you say to them?
I think the more we can focus face to face, not screen to screen, but face to face, hands on interactions with people, the stronger communities we're going to build. Now, we can say we built international communities because of technology. That's awesome. And if we build healthy connections, attachments, communities that aren't technology based, and then our kids are able to get involved, it doesn't mean that they can't be on the computer and learning how to use technology. It means that we're keeping them off those technologies that often so strongly affect self-esteem, that we have people who behave like bullies, and people who are more sensitive, who then feel like they have to fit in, or they're starting to change their beliefs about self. We want to look at the impact of the few that create the consequences for the many as well in that. So healthier social interactions, attachments, and connections in childhood and young adulthood or adolescence will lead to healthier attachments, connections, and better quality of interactions and respectful interactions online. That's my view.
Got it. And you're talking primarily about the social media sites. Obviously, like you said, so much of education is happening online now. It's hard
Yeah,
to take it all away, but you got to be sort of surgical about it, right?
yeah, I think we're just not seeing, or then we want to teach hygiene. So we talked those episodes on social media in the past. I think it's about teaching hygiene,
Mm,
and how to take care of yourself, how to clean the wound afterwards, even, and how to make sure you're keeping yourself hygienic enough that that you're not spreading the wounds or spreading the disease of the disruptions of hatred and poor attachments and feeling like a lack of love and vengeance and those emotions.
yeah,
So,
good,
and I'll come back to sleep. Sleep again is
good point. Yeah, I
critical.
was going to go there next. Yeah,
Yeah. So, I think that's really what we want to be aware of, is making sure we're not tired and our kids aren't tired, because guess what? That affects attunement. It affects the joint attention about what are we really focused on and where are we connected, and it will affect that passive engagement, because we might be tending to be more distracted and fragmenting our attention by things that we're not really making good decisions on where our attention can be, because we just feel tired and just don't have the energy, you know? So
yeah,
sleep is important. And our sleep hygiene, is so many apps are telling us and showing us, it sucks. So, and respecting how different people sleep differently is really important too.
yeah. And do you recommend any sleep tracking device or app that you use that people might find beneficial?
I don't have a specific one. I do use, I let my Apple app still track it, and I have another sleep app. I'm not convinced on their total accuracy. It'll say I had a great night of sleep. I'm like, no, I just
You
wasn't
feel
moving.
exhausted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I have a low resting heart rate too. So my low resting heart rate likely fools the sleep app. And because I do that, I have slower respiration rates. It's tracking heart rate and respiration and things like that. So the only way to really accurately track sleep is by putting the electrodes on the brain and really tracking
Yeah.
where your brainwave patterns are.
But I think, like you were just alluding to, they know when they've gotten good sleep, they know when they haven't,
Mhm.
and you should try to make time to get good sleep, right?
Right.
Aim for, I think, probably the consistent bedtime. Consistency came up so much in this
Mhm.
presentation.
Mhm.
Aim for the consistency, get the
Yeah.
sleep, and that
Yeah.
has that ripple effect out that'll be positive versus negative
Right.
for
Yeah.
everything else.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and give yourself some patience and grace. I know people are like, oh my God, I'm not asleep, and it drives them nuts. I'm like, don't worry about not sleeping.
Yeah.
You're gonna get tired enough to get to sleep. If you
Yeah.
focus on feeling miserable because you're not sleeping, you're just gonna feel miserable.
Right.
And then
Right.
sleep becomes the enemy, and trying to sleep, and the bed becomes the enemy. And there's so many ways to shift that. There's more about, we can someday you'll have to tune into the episode. Maybe I'll do on sleep. So let's continue back to keep on moving here. So mitigating the impact of technology, create device-free windows, designate regular times such as meal times and bedtime routines where phones are out of reach. Model healthy tech habits. Children learn by observing. Adults demonstrating balanced smartphone use teaches sustainable patterns. Practice tune-in moments. Dedicate specific moments for eye contact and facial check-ins during play to reinforce connection. Explain. Let me back up. So my daughter used to get driven nuts when I say, "Hey, Grace, what you doing? How's it going?" And I do that, and she's like, "Dad, you're interrupting me." I'm like, "I know, just want to let you know I'm here." So I do that purposely just to kind of let her know I'm still present, to bring her back to the here and now. So that's another piece there. So what we then want to do, we want to explain interruptions. So if we have these consistent times we're spending with our kids, and let's say for my job, I have potentially emergency calls or texts, I don't want to be checking my phone all the time. If I know I have an urgent situation, sometimes I would let her know I might have to take a call or I have to check this text to make sure everything's okay. You want that to be the exception, not the rule. And that's the piece, is that briefly explain what you're doing and why, and return the attention properly. So bring it back to time with your kids. So keep those rules, make sure you're following those rules. Don't be hypocritical about your rules, so that when you want to enforce it with your kids, you can do the same. And the last piece here, keep screens out of bedrooms. This supports better sleep quality and daytime responsiveness for both the parent and the child. Now, this is something that we could also have a whole episode on. This is a great suggestion. Is it realistic? Not necessarily, because depending on a person's, like, I'm ADD as heck. I can't go to sleep to quiet. I need noise. I learned at first when I was a kid, all we had were TVs, and TV shows helped me go to sleep because it's something that I could just listen to the dialogue. So the dialogue in my head wasn't as noisy as the dialogue on the TV. It also created light, so my brain got trained to go to sleep to light. But so then as I got older and I had the smartphones with the apps on and I could turn the screen off and listen to the show, that's what I do now. A lot of people, sleep experts say, don't do that. Live inside my head, live inside my daughter's head, a lot of other people's heads. And you just understand not everybody is programmed the same. Most people, I do believe, a majority of people should and can go to sleep without screens and without the noise, and learn to do that better. So it's hard though when our brainwave pattern profile of more excess frontal theta that wants to feel distracted, and at the end of the day we're going through the litany of things we felt like we screwed up and goofed up and could have done and should have done. That's what goes on in my inventory of the day, and having something to take my mind off of that helps me sleep. So, but is it a great suggestion? Absolutely. Do you want to model that? Absolutely. So those are things, like I said, that are just things we might want to pursue, and know that perfection is a dream to be aspired to, not realized, as has been realized time and again. So keep that in mind, parents. So now, leveraging technology for connection. This is good. Purposeful use. Technology can support bonding if used for shared activities, such as looking up a child's interest together. So do those searches on the internet, do some research, teach them how to do research, things like that. Joint media consumption. Co-reading ebooks or watching educational content together can provide warmth and shared attention. Shared narratives. Use devices to look at digital photo albums or reminisce about captured family moments together. Those are great opportunities to reconnect and to teach them about memory, and to share your different views of the same situation evening, and what stands out to them, what stands out to you. It often lets them remember where the love came from and when the love was. Collaborative play. Engage in collaborative games or storytelling apps that require interaction rather than solitary use. So you're wanting to interact with your kids, play with your kids, see that these moments are opportunities for you all to grow together, not just have them on their game and you're busy doing something else. My wife and I used to play Roblox with our daughter all the time. When my daughter was younger and learning how to use a computer, we'd play, Fireboy and Water Girl, I think it was, together, and we'd laugh and have fun with that. So those games are important, and it also, you teach them how to win and how to lose in those situations. And I think that's really important too. So in the interest of time, conclusion, perfection is not required. Secure attachment does not require being perfect. Good enough caregiving and a willingness to repair mistakes builds lasting trust. So the key is, to me, accountability and atonement. If you as a parent make a mistake, own it and then atone for it. Modeling is key. You are the primary model for your child's emotional literacy and behavior. We've talked about this many, many, many times, not necessarily from directly this parenting model, but behave how you want to behave. Be the person that that you want to be. Be the change you want to see in the world. Attachment is adaptable. The brain remains plastic. Safe, responsive relationships later in life can always support healing and security. I can account for that again and again and again in the work I do, and in helping also people build healthy relationships, even in their marriages, even though their family attachments were really dysfunctional. Final thought: healthy attachment is built over thousands of small everyday interactions, not grand gestures. And I think that's the thing to look at. Like I had mentioned earlier about, I think that trauma can come from death by a million paper cuts. Well, we can also build healthy attachments through, love by a million positive connections and attachments and experiences. So we want to see that it can go both ways. And even if we have 1,000 paper cuts, we can still have 10,000 events that fostered love and attachment and connection. And that's the important piece to see.
Yeah, that's a good point for people to remember. I think, again, going through this whole thing, I was just struck by the ability to recover and to repair and get back on track. Like you said, don't throw in the towel.
Absolutely. Yeah. And don't throw in the towel on yourself as a parent. I have so many parents who feel like, I'm so messed up, I just should give up. And then they're like, why change when I am the way I am? No, change is a choice. It might feel difficult and challenging, while change absolutely is a choice. Don't forget that. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your kids. I can't tell you how many people that I tell, and they've come to believe and see that. I say, I will never give up on you. You can go live your life, do your thing, and I will be here. And they find that sometimes years later, sometimes months later. Sometimes they just call and check in, like, hey, how you doing? So those consistent attachments and connections and consistency are crucial pieces to look at.
Indeed. Wise words, Dr. E.
Well, it's been a wonderful journey together, and maybe we'll, again, love to have you on the show in the future, and maybe we'll do this co-host thing should the path of life change for you,
For sure. Yeah, it's been great, Dr. E. Really appreciate you. Really appreciate you having me be a part of this. It's great.
I'll always love you. You're always in my heart, bro.
Same. All right.
Absolutely. So until next time.